Hi there, everybody, and welcome to the Growth Execution Podcast. My name is Mal McCallion. I'm your host here today with Jeffrey Feldberg. He's the CEO and co-founder of Deep Wealth. Jeffrey, hi there. How you doing?
Hey, Mel. Thank you so much for having me today. It's a pleasure. I'm doing great. How about you?
Yeah, really, really well. Thank you. Thank you so much for being on. We're really going to delve into your business and how you have built it up and indeed how you've exited some as well. But I wanted to start out, if I may, with just your kind of launch story. So what did you, what brought you first of all to starting your own business?
It's a great question, Mel. So I had finished my MBA program, and it's funny, there's the old story of acres of diamonds, that often the diamonds that we're looking for are right below our feet. In my MBA program, this is pre-internet. The internet was just coming on board, so it's going to sound ancient to some of your listeners and the community. But in my MBA program, communications weren't all that great. And so being a bit of a geeky nerd into the technology and loving to help people and education, I figured out how to add value to my own MBA program by putting together what back in the day was called an intranet, or today it would be like one of your common social media platforms. Again, it seems like same old, but back then it wasn't. And that worked wonders in my program. So when I graduated, a week before graduating, I said, you know what, if I could solve this problem in my business program, there's got to be other business programs out there, other business schools that are having the same issue, that I can solve their problem. And that began what eventually would become known as EMBANET, which in the early days stood for Electronic MBA Network, and didn't think too much into the name at the time because I outgrew the business school marketplace. And I took the name regardless to any kind of online program at the time is what the business focused on. So that's what got some very humble beginnings into my business career and getting things out there by solving a painful problem that many schools and business schools in particular and continuing education were going through.
Brilliant. And I love the fact that you'd kind of experienced this problem firsthand. I'm very, very keen as a self-confessed nerd myself on the idea of how you can just like go and kind of build something and try and fix it yourself. So did you find then that that the solution itself, the products that you built, was right off the bat worked a treat? Was it perfect for the market, or did you do some iteration? How did that go?
It's another great question, Mal. You're full of all these terrific questions. Well, here's the thing, and I saw this firsthand. So look, I had my test group. I had the entire school as my test group, which worked wonderfully. And then I went to market, and you know what? Something interesting happened. I failed. I failed miserably. I failed day after day after day. The truth is, I really had no business being in business in the early days. It was my grit and my passion that kept me in the game long enough to begin to figure things out. And I saw firsthand, particularly I know for the startup community, that's part of who you're helping and what you're doing. What I found anyways in my own experience was whatever I figured my revenues would be, I should take that and I should cut that by a quarter. And whatever my expenses should be, I should at least double them. And that's really where things began, at least for me as a startup entrepreneur at the time, before I had a business that I can actually call a business that was successful.
Fantastic. And look, I'm sure there are people listening out there who can so relate to the kind of expectations and the planning that you go into right at the front. And then the reality can be very, very different. But you were kind enough to talk there about the failure side of things. And I think that's a really important topic for a lot of people. Perhaps a lot of people are afraid of failure, and that actually stops them from starting their business in the first place. Now, obviously, you were on the course, you're doing your MBA and so on. When you were in that situation, and perhaps things were going badly, how did that feel to you? What made you continue to carry on?
Well, Mal, here's the thing. Looking back, hindsight's always 2020. The idea was the right idea. The marketplace at that time when I first launched, it was the wrong marketplace. And everyone around me was saying, Jeffrey, you're crazy. You're nuts. Why are you doing this? Why don't you just, you got your MBA. All your friends are signing these six-figure contracts and they have these fancy titles behind their names, or they're getting all these signing bonuses and perks. Why fight it? Why just go be with them? Why are you being so difficult? But here's the thing. There's an art and a science of running a business. And, the science we'll leave to the science side, but the art is looking within. And within, I just had such belief, such conviction. I knew there was a problem out there and it was a painful problem. And I knew that I was the one who had to absolutely solve it. I didn't want anybody else to solve it because I knew, give me the chance. I'm going to do this so well. I'll be world class. I just need to get to the right point and maybe adjust a few things here and there. And so once I changed the market focus, that's when things really took off. And it wasn't quick, but it was slow and steady wins the race. And I'll tell you though, Mal, the one thing that I learned early on, I didn't get any outside financing, any outside capital, which some people say, well, Jeffrey, why would you do that to yourself? You could have grown the company faster. And perhaps I could have, but here's what I learned. And it's a favorite saying of mine now. And it's that resourcefulness trumps resources. The long and short, I'm going to fast forward a little bit here. That little company that was failing, that was fledgling all the way along, ultimately I had a 9-figure exit. And so a little bit of a spoiler alert there. I mean, it was a wonderful exit. Myself and my business partners were very fortunate and grateful, had a wonderful team of people around us to help make that happen. But I can tell you this with certainty, that resourcefulness, had we had the money, had we had that outside financing, I don't know if we would have had the success that we eventually would claim later on. I don't think that would have happened because that resourcefulness, when you can't write the check, and I got to tell you, most times you shouldn't be writing the check. Just because you can doesn't mean that you should. But when we didn't have the resources and we had to become resourceful, and how are we going to grow? How are we going to get out there and get more customers? How are we going to just make this happen? That resourcefulness gave me the competitive edge over my competitors. And I have to tell you, I'm friends with my competitors to this day, but I drove them nuts. I was taking their business and they're saying, who is this little startup? We got gazillions of dollars of financing, and Jeffrey and his company Embinet are coming along and they're stealing the contracts away and they're winning these bids and the different customers. What's going on here? Something's not right. It was the resourcefulness, and that came through in spades, loud and clear to the marketplace.
Fantastic. And look, we spent a lot of time here talking about this kind of product concept as being the why, why are you solving this problem? And it's that drive. And as you put it so eloquently, the kind of resourcefulness over resources, I think, is a wonderful, wonderful idea for people who are really just starting out or wondering what they're going to do next. Thinking about that time and the kind of growth, and obviously that 9-figure exit, we'll get onto that. It's a fantastic number. What do you think made the difference from this kind of personnel side? Now, obviously, when you're starting out yourself, you've got your idea, you kind of look around, and you think, right, this is starting to work. How did you then know who to bring in and when?
So full disclosure, I run my businesses like cockroach startups. So what are cockroach startups? They are bootstrapped to the hilt, and your culture, your vision, your mission, your people are all drinking the same Kool-Aid, as we say, and are just really going forward with that. It becomes a way of life. It becomes a mission. So on the growth side, I was looking for a very special kind of individual. And let's be honest. When we're hiring someone to become part of the team, it costs no more money to find a person who has a positive attitude than a person who just doesn't, or a person who's cynical, or a person who's negative. I didn't need those people. I don't want those people. I was looking for people who had something to prove. They had a bit of a chip on their shoulder in a good way. And their chip on their shoulder was, give me the opportunity and I'll show you why you made the right choice in hiring me. And that's what I looked for. And that's ultimately what I hired. And the culture that we had because of that, it was just, looking back, I can't believe when I look back today at the richness of the culture. We stood beside each other. We stood behind each other. We had this common vision. We had this common goal because we knew that we were changing, as we like to say, the social fabric of society, one learner at a time. As an example, we took great pride that some of the clients that we had, although we worked with institutions, tier one institutions, it was the students that ultimately we were helping. So to have a single mother who was able to further her life through education for herself, for her family, to get that graduate degree because of what we're doing with that university, where she otherwise wouldn't be able to do it, that was just a privilege to be able to do that. Or to have a president of a Fortune 10 company who's also furthering his or her reach through the education that's being received and having such a massive influence on all the thousands or tens of thousands of people that have direct contact with what this person is doing. That was also a privilege to do. So it was finding people who really bought into the culture of what we're doing. We were a high growth culture. The growth that we had a little bit of an inside joke, Mal, back in the day. And it was 1 year at Embanet was like a dog year because it was like 7 years everywhere else. That's how quickly we were growing. But
Wow.
it's not for everyone. You need a very specific type of person. You need to know who you're looking for and who you should be bringing onto the onto the team to make sure that you're having the right personnel that can just take things to the next level.
That's right. And it's so true. And thank you for sharing that with us. Every single individual that you add to your team, particularly in the early days, has a much higher percentage impact than perhaps those you might hire further down the line. And I think you're right. It's kind of mindset, isn't it? That's really, really important in those early days.
It is, and I don't want to glamorize it for your listeners. And the truth is yes, there's some wonderful things that you can do, but at the same time, it's challenging, and you do have constraints, and you're just looking around saying, okay, how are we going to do this? It just doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. How can we make this happen? But
Mhm.
the old saying, if you want to change your life, change the questions that you're asking. So ask the right questions, you start getting the right answers, and that's where opportunity is at the crossroads of just persistence and grit. And that's where the magic starts to happen.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, you've spoken again eloquently about the kinds of people that you were helping. How much did having a kind of almost the permanent sort of avatar of those people, a real kind of understanding of the people you were here to serve, how much did that drive you into?
It was huge to have that avatar, to know who we were serving. A lot of the staff were holding down the business. They were there day in, day out. They didn't have that opportunity to travel like I did, to meet with prospective customers or clients or customers at the time. And so one of the things that we would do is we would actively ask for testimonials from everyone who we touched. And we would take those testimonials and we would share them with everyone in the company. And we would have our regular monthly meetings, our quarterly meetings with the management team, the weekly meetings. And those testimonials became a way of life for everyone in the company. Let's not forget who we're serving. Or I spoke to this person at the university today, and here's what they were saying. Here's how we made a difference. And we did surveys and questionnaires and just you name it, whatever kind of feedback that we could get, we would go out there because we learned from that as well. And it was asking the right questions that actually helped catapult our growth. When we put our first division, our first Embanet 1 out of business with Embanet 2, that's another story that we can talk about at one point. But having that avatar of knowing who we're serving, what that avatar is all about, what they're going through for the entire company, that's what made the difference. And so from everyone, from our entry level position all the way to the top, our saying at the company was treat every interaction as though the survival of the company depends on it, because it does.
Fantastic. So important. And it's that sort of that energy and that kind of almost scrappiness where you're kind of like, right, this is this important. It retains that startup mentality. And I think that's what I have observed in the businesses that I've been lucky enough to be part of that have grown, is just that kind of real belief that this is important, and that actually you can't drop it. You've got to kind of keep the focus going all the time. And when you think about the business itself, and I'm very mindful that you had the opportunity to sell for less. Is that right? Earlier on, and you decided to hold out, and that turned from a 7-figure exit into a 9-figure. Is that right?
Right. So you know the story from our offline conversations that we're talking. So yes. So look, in the beginning, it was failure day after day after day that became my best friend. And then when I finally started to have success, I had the proverbial knock at the door from a very successful and experienced buyer. And long story short, he provided a seven-figure offer to buy the business. And by for most people, it would have been Jeffrey. Hey, that's terrific. Grab it, run, don't look back. Say yes and thank you very much, because look at all the struggles that you did.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, I just it was again. This is to any business. There's an art and a science of running a business, and this is more the art of it. I can't give you a logical reason of why I said no, other than it didn't feel right. So
Mhm.
when I took a step back, and as my intuition, a gut feeling, however you want to call it, it was Jeffrey, something is off with this. Don't do it. And so, to the dismay of family members and friends around me, when I said no, and they said, Jeffrey, you're crazy. And in a different circumstance, they'd be right in what they're saying. But in this situation, it just wasn't adding up for me. It didn't feel right. And I said no. And so for the next 2 years, I dove into this crazy and wacky world of mergers and acquisitions.
Mhm.
And I spoke to the cast of characters that were in there, everyone and anyone who would speak to me. And long story short, a different buyer with a different offer had nine figures for me. And that I said yes to with myself and my business partners. And Mal, here's the thing: preparation is that's the key, the magic key that unlocked everything for us. We were the same company, the same people, the same service, but it was our preparation for the liquidity event, which, by the way, those strategies are also the same strategies to help grow the company. That's what's made that difference. And that's what allowed us to go from a seven-figure offer of saying no to a nine-figure offer of saying yes.
Wow, that is a truly incredible story. And congratulations once more. It's a
Thank you.
fantastic, fantastic result. And now you help others to realize that dream as well, right? This is your business, Deep Wealth. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, thank you. So after the nine-figure exit, yes, the truth is that's really where the story should have ended. And as grateful and as happy as I was, I walked away saying, "Wow, Jeffrey, you were at a fork in the road. You didn't even know it." Now, nothing wrong with a seven-figure offer. Having said that, had I said yes to the seven-figure offer, all that additional money I was leaving on the table, and it was my money, my business partner's money. That was our money. No one was giving that to us. That was our hard-earned money I was leaving on the table. I would have been handing that over to the buyer and not realizing it. And what a difference one decision can make. So when I walked away from that, I was very sympathetic to how, as business owners, we take the chances. It's the proverbial blood, sweat, and tears that we're putting into everything, that we turn the impossible into I'm possible. Yet, despite all those wonderful things that we do, the jobs that we create in the community, the problem that we solve, there's people out there who may want to take advantage to us. And so, what happened was people in the entrepreneurial community who knew me or heard of the story began to reach out, and they were asking for help. And being sympathetic to the challenges that they had, I began to coach people, myself and my business partner, of what do you need to do to prepare. And so we were doing that for quite some time. And a couple of years ago, I tapped my business shoulder, or I tapped my business partner on the shoulder, and I said, you know what? We made a commitment to ourselves that after our liquidity event, that we would, in any way we could, just be a game changer out there, as many entrepreneurs and founders and as business owners that we can. And it's great that we're doing it, one here and a few there, but we're not really doing this at scale. We have an online learning background. That's what we did. We worked with millions of enrollments. We helped all kinds of different professionals and adult learners. Let's do the same for us. And so over the next 2 years, we took all of our strategies that worked, our strategies that didn't work, and we reverse engineered them, and we put them into what's called the Deep Wealth Experience, which is a three-part system, Mel. And so the first part is, to get a little bit geeky here on you, it's called
Please.
asynchronous learning. It's anywhere, anytime learning. So from your phone, your tablet, your computer, you come online and you can access all the strategies and the tactics. It's effectively our liquidity event playbook. You're accessing that, what worked for us, what has been improved. You have full access to that. The second part is a mastermind group. And this is where you're in a mastermind group of up to anywhere from 10 to 15 other business owners who are not competitors and who, like you, want to have a liquidity event. You're going through this together and you're interacting with them, and questions are being asked, answers are being provided. You're learning from other industry best practices of what to do, what not to do. And it's a very rich environment. And then the third component is a life success coach, which in this case, it's myself and my business partner. We're the guinea pigs, we're the founders of the system. And that's where we walk the business owners through step by step by step what you need to do to prepare. And we've done this over a 9-step roadmap. We didn't call it 9-step roadmap back in the day when we were doing this, but we created a 9-step roadmap for ourselves that took us from the 7-figure to the 9-figure offer, and had us do a 10x on the value of our business. And you do all of that in 90 days, so that on the 91st day, you've done 2 things. Number one, you've created a blueprint to help you optimize the value in your business through growth. And I know that's something near and dear to your heart, Mal.
Very much so.
And the second thing that you do is you walk away with certainty that you'll capture the maximum value when it's time for your liquidity event. It's one thing to believe. It's entirely different to know. When you know, it's okay to believe. But when you believe and you don't quite know, and it comes to a liquidity event, and it's likely the largest, most important business transaction that you'll ever do in your life, you don't want to be just believing. You want to be, and needing to be, knowing. And that's the certainty that you get.
Brilliant. And just to be clear, a liquidity event is not always a sale of the business. Is that right?
I love the 2 words liquidity event, because those 2 words cover so many different instances. You may want to have a full exit. Terrific. You may say, you know what, I'm going to take 20% of the chips off the table and I'm going to have someone else come in and help with that. Terrific. Or you may say, you know what, I want to just raise capital. I want to just grow like crazy. I want to have some outside money come in to help take the company to new levels. All of those are liquidity events. But regardless of what you do, raising capital, selling all or part of the company, the one thing that they all have in common, and your biggest area of focus, is the value of the company. And here's what I learned firsthand when I said no to the 7-figure offer. What I learned was the value, what some people call enterprise value. The enterprise value of a business doesn't happen during the liquidity event. Your value, your enterprise value, it's like looking in the rearview mirror at the depth, the quality, and level of the preparation that you've done going into it. Now, most business owners don't like with what I'm about to say next, but listen, the truth is the truth. If you want to maximize the value for your business, preparation could easily be 2 to 3 years minimum to maximize the preparation of your business. Can you take the deep wealth system and do it in a year or less? Yes, you can. You absolutely can. You're not going to have the opportunity, though, to realize as much value as you could if you did that preparation for 2 or more years.
Yeah, and you're living proof that by hanging out for those extra couple of years, you can significantly enhance the actual value you get for the business, and you can only have a liquidity event for it once, right?
You're exactly right, Mal. And with what you do and what you're doing with Groshin and with your strategies of how to grow and the different techniques that you're doing, that really plays in well, because effectively, Mal, when you're utilizing your system and you're helping the businesses grow, it's a wonderful situation to be in. Do you keep a thriving, growing, profitable business forever? Or do you have some kind of liquidity event tomorrow? Well, choice is yours, but you can't go wrong in either situation. And so growth, the ability to grow, knowing how to grow, is absolutely essential as you look down the road to some kind of liquidity event.
That's brilliant. Well, listen, thank you so much for all of that information and all of those tips. I wonder if I could just ask you some quick fire questions just as we kind of head towards the end of this particular podcast, Jeffrey. So first of all, I want to know what advice would you give your younger self today when you were just about to start out in your business? What would you advise young Jeffrey to do?
What I'd advise the young Jeffrey to do is know that the journey and not the destination, that the journey is the treasure, the journey is the reward. Enjoy it. As challenging as things may be, as hard as things may seem, it's okay. And as crazy as it sounds, welcome those challenges, welcome those so-called problems, because they're making you better. Your success is waiting for you. You're probably not ready for it. So you need to go through these challenges so that you are ready for it, so that you can welcome the massive success that's just around the corner, and just smile, laugh, and have some fun along the way.
Brilliant. What would you say is the key to a great launch?
The key to a great launch is really making sure that you're delivering 10 times the value of what you're charging. And let's make some assumptions here. We're going to assume that you've identified a painful problem. The problem is so painful that people are willing to pay you to take that pain away, and that you're world class in solving that problem, and that the value that you're delivering, again, it's 10 times the value than what they're paying for you. When you have all of that, you believe in yourself, you're passionate, then take that to the world. That's your gift to give to the world, to make it a better place and to help other people. There's a saying that if you help enough people achieve their goals and solve their problems, eventually you'll reach your goals. And I'm a big believer in just helping people, adding more value than what's being asked for or expected.
Brilliant. Thank you. And final question, what do you think is going to be kind of a really big sort of niche for people to get into over the coming sort of 5-10 years or so? Do you see any businesses that are coming along, or any kind of industries or concepts that you're really excited about?
Wow, that's a great question. And a crystal ball for 5 or 10 years. To me, what I would say is, regardless of where the technology is, regardless of where society is, the one thing that we can count on are what some people call problems and I call opportunities. And so for me, whatever's going on, find the painful problem. Ask around, what are you passionate? What's a painful problem that you are passionate to solve? And there's a large enough market that's there to support you and will happily pay you to solve that problem. Wherever that is and whatever you're doing with that, that's always a pathway to success, of just helping people achieve their goals.
Fantastic. Jeff Feldberg of Deep Wealth, thank you so much for being with us on the Growth Execution podcast this week. Really, really insightful stuff. How can people get in touch with you, Jeff?
Well, thank you, Mel. And again, Mel, thank you so much for having me as a guest on your podcast. I really appreciate it. The best way you can get in touch with me is you can go to deepwealth.com. It's exactly how it sounds, DEEPWEALTH.com. And you'll learn all about us. You can listen to our podcast. You can see the articles that we have coming out. And there's also a contact page that you can see. And also, if you're on LinkedIn, you can look for me, Jeffrey Feldberg, for Deep Wealth on LinkedIn. And I welcome any questions or comments that you may have.
Brilliant. Jeffrey, it's been so good to speak to you. Thank you so much for your time this week. That's it for this week on the Growth Execution podcast. Hope you have all picked up some amazing tips from Jeffrey.